The Florida sun, a familiar and brilliant white gold, streamed through the panoramic windows of the Jordan estate in Jupiter, casting intricate dancing patterns across the gleaming marble floors. Yvette Prieto, enjoying a rare, quiet morning, sipped her green tea. With the twins, Victoria and Isabel, at their equestrian lessons and Michael away on a whirlwind business trip for his various brands, she had decided to finally tackle a long-neglected project. Organizing the storage rooms in the West Wing, a repository of memories and items accumulated over their years together. "It's now or never," she murmured to herself, her voice a soft echo in the vast, silent house. She descended a spiral staircase into the climate-controlled basement, a space that, unlike the immaculately curated residence above, was a testament to a life lived fully. It was a labyrinth of neatly stacked crates and covered furniture. Michael's countless trophies, game-worn sneakers preserved in glass cases, memorabilia from his legendary career with the Bulls, family photo albums, and the girls' childhood treasures filled shelves that lined the walls. A nostalgic smile touched Yvette's lips as she ran a hand over a tiny pair of Air Jordans, a gift for the twins on their first birthday. As she worked her way through a section dedicated to items from their early years together, her eyes caught something out of place. Tucked away behind a row of golf bags and sealed boxes of cigars, almost deliberately obscured from view, was a sleek black metal box. It was different from the standard cardboard storage boxes. This one was heavy, cold to the touch, and secured with a combination lock. It bore no label, no hint of its contents. A strange sense of unease settled over her. She paused, her hand hovering over the lock. For a moment, she hesitated. Her relationship with Michael was built on a foundation of profound trust and mutual respect. In their 12 years together, there had been no secrets, no hidden corners in their lives. He was an open book to her, as she was to him. With a deep breath, dismissing the feeling as foolish, she remembered a combination Michael often used for sentimental things: the date they first met. She dialed the numbers. With a soft click, the lock sprang open. Inside, the contents were meticulously organized. It wasn't memorabilia or old keepsakes. It was a collection of legal binders and financial folders, arranged chronologically. Her heart began to beat a little faster. She pulled out the first folder, labeled simply with a year, 2013. Inside were bank statements from an account she had never heard of, with a bank based in Wilmington, North Carolina. There were records of substantial, regular wire transfers to an entity she didn't recognize. Her hands, usually so steady, began to tremble slightly as she delved deeper. She found legal documents, contracts, and property deeds, all signed by Michael, but under the umbrella of a corporation she had never heard him mention: Jordan Legacy Holdings. Included, the name itself sent a shiver down her spine. Legacy. What legacy was this? Further down, in a folder marked Project Overview, she found photographs. In one, a younger-looking Michael stood beaming next to an unfamiliar man in front of a modern, yet understated building. The photo was dated early 2014, nearly 12 years ago. The building in the photo matched the address on the property deeds. The monthly wire transfers were significant, enough to fund a substantial operation. Yvette's mind reeled, struggling to connect the dots. For 12 years, her husband, the man she shared her life, her bed, her deepest thoughts with, had been maintaining a secret operation. He was funneling millions of dollars into Wilmington, the city where he grew up. Why? What could possibly be so important that he would conceal it from her? Why had he never, not once, mentioned Jordan Legacy Holdings? Her thoughts spiraled into darker territories. Was it another family? A child she knew nothing about? The thought was a physical blow, winding her, making her stomach churn with a nauseating mix of fear and betrayal. No, not Michael. He wouldn't do that. He couldn't. There had to be another explanation. But if it was something noble, something good, why the elaborate secrecy? The shrill ring of her cell phone startled her, making her jump. It was Rosalind, Michael's older sister. "Hey, Yvette. Just calling to see how my favorite sister-in-law and my beautiful nieces are doing." Rosalind's warm, cheerful voice filled the silence. "Roz, hi," Yvette managed, trying to keep her voice even, to disguise the tremor that threatened to betray her. We're fine. The girls are riding." "Is everything okay, sweetie? You sound a little off." "Just tired. Decided to do a big clear out in the basement." "You can imagine," she said, the lie tasting like ash in her mouth. "Oh, Lord, I can't even think about tackling Michael's mountain of stuff. Listen, I'm just calling to confirm you're all still coming for the family cookout next month. Your brother-in-law is already planning his menu." Yvette responded automatically, her mind a million miles away, staring at the open box that felt like a Pandora's box in her own life. Did Rosalind know? Was this a secret Michael kept from everyone? Or just from her? "Roz," she began, her voice dropping. "Quick question. It's probably nothing. Does Michael have any business interest in Wilmington that I might not know about? Some old investment, maybe?" There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "Wilmington? Not that I know of, honey. You know he's got his hands in everything, but he usually keeps it all in Charlotte or up here." "Why do you ask?" "No reason," Yvette deflected quickly, her heart sinking. "Just found some old paperwork and got curious. Don't worry about it." After she hung up, she carefully placed the documents back in the box, closed the lid, and walked numbly back upstairs to their master's suite. She sat on the edge of their enormous bed, the opulent room suddenly feeling cold and impersonal. She picked up a framed photo from the nightstand, the two of them at a charity gala, his arm wrapped securely around her, both of them laughing. 12 years of secrets, 12 years of a hidden life. The tears she had been holding back finally came. They started as silent streams, tracing paths down her cheeks, then escalated into deep, shuddering sobs that shook her entire body. She buried her face in a pillow, muffling the sounds of her heartbreak, not wanting the household staff to hear. In that moment, she questioned everything. Not just the contents of the box, but the very foundation of their marriage, the truth of the man she loved. The sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, but Yvette didn't notice. She finally rose, her face blotchy, her eyes swollen. She wiped her tears with a steely resolve. She would wait for Michael's return the next day, and she would confront him. After 12 years, she deserved the truth, no matter how devastating it might be. "Who are you, Michael?" she whispered to the smiling man in the photograph, his familiar face now a mask hiding a world of secrets she had never dreamed existed. The soft whir of the private elevator arriving in the main foyer announced Michael's return. Yvette stood motionless by the kitchen island, a statue of forced composure. It was just after 7 p.m., and the twins were in the adjacent family room, engrossed in a movie, their laughter a stark contrast to the heavy silence in her heart. All day, she had been a ghost in her own home, her mind a battlefield of anger, hurt, and a terrifying sense of loss. "Daddy!" The twins' joyous shouts broke the spell. Isabel and Victoria scrambled from the sofa and launched themselves at their father. Michael, despite the weariness etched on his face from a multi-city trip, scooped them both into his powerful arms, his laughter booming through the open-plan living space. "There are my girls. Did you miss your old man?" "Finish your movie, angels," Yvette instructed, her voice tight, betraying the storm raging within her. Victoria, the more perceptive of the two, glanced from her father's smiling face to her mother's rigid posture, her own smile faltering slightly. She sensed the discord. Michael set the girls down, his eyes immediately finding Yvette's. He walked towards her, his expression shifting from paternal joy to concern. He leaned in for their customary welcome home kiss, but she turned her head slightly, offering her cheek instead. He froze, his hand hovering near her waist. The rejection, however subtle, was a palpable thing between them. "Welcome home," she said, her tone flat. "I saved you a plate. It's in the warming drawer." During the strained meal that followed, Michael tried to bridge the chasm that had opened between them. He recounted anecdotes from his meetings, asked about the girl's week, about her days. Yvette's answers were clipped, monosyllabic. The tension was a third person at the table, so thick that even the twins, who had returned to the room, felt it. "Mommy, why are you sad?" Isabel asked, her large brown eyes full of worry. "Mommy's just had a long day, baby," Michael answered for her, his gaze locked on Yvette, a silent question in his eyes. "How about we all go for a swim before bed?" After the girls were tucked in, the house fell into a profound silence. Michael found Yvette in the grand living room, staring out at the moonlit water of the Intracoastal Waterway. He poured himself a glass of water and sat on the sofa opposite her. "All right, Yvette, what is it?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. "You've barely looked at me since I walked through that door." Without a word, she turned, her expression unreadable, and left the room. Michael waited, a knot of confusion and anxiety tightening in his stomach. She returned moments later carrying the black metal box. She placed it on the marble coffee table between them, with a heavy, definitive thud. "I found this yesterday," she said, her voice low, trembling with suppressed emotion. "I think you owe me an explanation. What is Jordan Legacy Holdings? And why have you been sending millions of dollars to Wilmington for the last 12 years, without ever breathing a word of it to me?" The color drained from Michael's face. His legendary composure, the icy calm he was famous for on the court, shattered. He stared at the box as if it were a venomous snake. Where did you find that?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "In the basement." "Hidden," she retorted, crossing her arms, a defensive wall around her broken heart. "But that's not the point, Michael. The point is the secret, the lies." Is there someone else? Another family I should know about?" The last words were torn from her, a raw, painful whisper that hung in the air between them. The tears she had fought so hard to contain finally broke free, streaming down her face. "No," Michael shot to his feet, the word exploding from him. "No, Yvette. Never. How could you even think that?" He moved toward her, his hands outstretched, but she flinched and took a step back. "Then explain it to me," she cried, her voice cracking. 12 years, Michael. 12 years of you living a double life." He raked his hands over his face, his expression a mixture of guilt and anguish. He looked cornered, trapped by a secret he had guarded for over a decade. "They're not lies," he finally said, his voice ragged. "It was a secret I thought was for the best." He sank back onto the sofa, the energy draining out of him. "It started back in 2013, right after we got married." He began to explain, his words halting at first. He spoke of a trip back to Wilmington, of reconnecting with ghosts from his past, of an idea that took root and grew into something he felt compelled to do, alone. "It's a foundation," he explained, choosing his words with immense care. "A personal project, something that means more to me than I can say. But I needed to keep it separate from my public life, from the media. And yes," he looked at her, his eyes pleading for understanding, "even from you." "Why?" The single word was filled with all her pain and confusion. "We're married, Michael. We're partners. I thought we shared everything. I wanted to tell you," he said, his voice thick with regret. "So many times I came close, but the longer I kept it, the bigger the secret became. The harder it was to find the right way to explain why I'd hidden it in the first place." "So you didn't trust me," she stated, the tears now flowing unchecked. "I trust you more than anyone on this planet," he replied, his own voice breaking. "But this is different. It's tied to things from before you, from a part of my life I've tried to put behind me." "Try," she insisted, her voice gaining a new strength fueled by desperation. "Try to explain it, Michael, because right now, my imagination is a nightmare, and I need the truth." He looked from the damning evidence spread on the table to the shattered look on his wife's face. He made a decision. "I can't explain it properly with just words," he said, his voice gaining a new resolve. "It won't be enough. I need to show you. We'll go to Wilmington. Tomorrow. I'll take you there, and you'll see. Then you'll understand everything. Wilmington? Tomorrow? Yvette shook her head, bewildered. The girls have school. You have meetings. This is more important, Michael interrupted, his gaze unwavering. This is about us. I'll clear my schedule. We can have my sister stay with the girls. Please, Yvette. Trust me. Just one more time. The silence that enveloped the room was heavy with the weight of 12 years of unspoken truths. Yvette looked at the man she loved, at the raw vulnerability in his eyes, a look she had rarely seen. Finally, with a slow, deliberate nod, she acquiesced. One more time, Michael, but I want all of it, the whole truth. That night, they lay in the same bed, a vast, cold distance separating them. Yvette watched the silhouette of her husband as he stared at the ceiling, lost in his own thoughts. 12 years of marriage, 2 beautiful daughters, a lifetime of shared memories, and yet a huge part of Michael Jordan remained a mystery. The thought kept her awake until the first light of dawn, her heart torn between the terror of what she might discover and the desperate, burning need to finally know. The private jet ascended into a hazy sky, the Florida coastline shrinking below them. The atmosphere inside the cabin was as thick and heavy as the clouds they were climbing through. Michael sat across from Yvette, fiddling with a tablet but not really seeing it. Yvette stared out the window, her reflection a pale, ghostly image against the blue expanse. The only sound was the low, powerful hum of the engines. The girls were upset we weren't there to take them to school this morning, Yvette said finally, her voice devoid of emotion. Michael looked up, his eyes weary. I know. I promised them we'd do something special this weekend to make up for it. This couldn't wait, Yvette. Couldn't wait another 12 years, you mean? She countered, the barb sharp and aimed to wound. He flinched. He unbuckled his seatbelt and moved to the seat beside her. Do you remember when we first started getting serious? He asked, his voice low. I was already me, Michael Jordan, the brand, the legend. It was already a circus. Yvette nodded, the memory vivid. Dating him had been like stepping into a whirlwind. The constant attention, the lack of privacy, the weight of his global fame. Back then, he continued, I was trying to build a future, but I was also running from a past. Everyone knows the highlights, the championships, the glory. But they don't know the whole story. They don't know where I really came from. I know you came from Wilmington, she said. I know about your family, your high school. You know the sanitized version, the one that fits the narrative. He corrected gently. You don't know about the ones who didn't make it out. He paused, gathering his thoughts. In 2013, just before our wedding, I went back to Wilmington for a high school reunion. It was sobering. He told her about seeing old friends, old teammates, men who had once shared his dreams, who had possessed immense talent, but whose lives had taken drastically different turns. I saw my old running mate from the team, David, he said, a shadow passing over his face. He was working 2 jobs, one as a security guard, just to make ends meet. This was a guy, Yvette. Everyone in the state knew he was destined for greatness, maybe even more so than me. What happened to him? Yvette asked, her curiosity beginning to pierce through her anger. Blown out knee his senior year. One bad landing, Michael said, shaking his head. No money for the top surgeons. No access to the kind of elite physical therapy I had after my injuries. His dream died on that gym floor. While I was getting the best medical care in the world, David was being told to just ice it and hope for the best. Yvette watched him intently, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to shift. She was starting to see the outline of something she hadn't considered. That conversation with David, it haunted me, Michael confessed. He told me about other kids, a new generation of talent in the same neighborhoods, with the same potential and the same lack of resources. Kids whose entire futures were being decided by one unlucky injury, one misstep. It felt fundamentally wrong. The rest of the flight passed with Michael slowly, painfully, unwrapping the secret. He explained how that conversation had ignited a quiet, fierce resolve within him. At the pinnacle of his post-career success, he decided to use his immense wealth to correct a cosmic injustice, to do it his way, without fanfare or publicity. When the jet touched down in Wilmington, the tension between them had softened, replaced by a nervous anticipation. A discreet black SUV was waiting on the tarmac. Michael took the wheel, his hands, which had once held basketballs with such grace, now gripping the steering wheel tightly. He drove them through the familiar streets of his youth. "This whole area has changed," he murmured, more to himself than to her. They drove past the gleaming downtown and into older, less prosperous neighborhoods, the kind of working-class areas that are the backbone of so many American cities. Finally, he parked in front of a modern, two-story brick building. It was handsome and well-maintained, but deliberately anonymous. A small, tasteful sign by the door read, "Horizon Performance and Rehabilitation Center." There was no mention of Jordan, no Jumpman logo, nothing to connect it to its famous benefactor. A man in his late 50s, with kind eyes and a warm smile, was waiting for them on the steps. He broke into a huge grin when he saw Michael. The two men embraced, a hug of deep, long-standing friendship. "David, this is my wife, Yvette," Michael said, a nervous edge to his voice that Yvette had never heard before. "At long last," David said, extending a hand to Yvette. His grip was firm and warm. "It is a genuine honor to meet the woman who finally tamed this old bull." "The pleasure is all mine," Yvette replied, her voice strained, "though it seems I'm the last one to be let in on the secret." David shot Michael a quick, questioning look. Michael gave a subtle nod. "Well then," David said, his smile returning, "let's show you what your husband has been secretly pouring his heart and soul into for all these years." The interior of the building was a stunning contrast to its understated exterior. It was a world-class medical facility. They walked past a reception area where a young woman greeted Michael simply as MJ, with a familiar smile, no awe or celebrity, struck deference. It was clear his presence here was a normal occurrence. "We started in a rented room at the local YMCA," David explained as they walked down a bright, airy corridor, "a couple of treadmills and some weights. Now, we have this." He pushed open a set of double doors, revealing a sprawling gymnasium filled with young athletes. Teenagers of all ages were engaged in rigorous rehabilitation exercises, guided by a team of professional physical therapists. The space was filled with state-of-the-art equipment that would rival any professional sports team's training facility. "We provide services for around 75 to 100 young athletes a year," David continued, his voice filled with pride. "All of them from low-income backgrounds, all with potentially career-ending injuries." "And the treatment is free?" Yvette asked, her voice barely a whisper as she took in the scale of the operation. "Completely," David confirmed. "From the initial MRI and surgery, with the best orthopedic surgeons in the state, to the months, sometimes years, of rehabilitation. We also provide academic tutoring and college scholarship application guidance." They toured the rest of the facility: private treatment rooms, hydrotherapy pools, a nutrition center, and even a small dormitory for athletes who had to travel from other parts of the state. On the walls, in simple frames, were photos of the program's graduates. Yvette recognized a few faces from college basketball broadcasts. "Is that Marcus Page?" she asked, pointing to a photo of a smiling young man in a UNC jersey. "Yep," Michael answered, a proud grin spreading across his face. "He was one of our first torn ACL, his junior year of high school. Doctors said he'd be lucky to play recreationally again." As they moved through the building, Yvette began to understand. This wasn't just a clinic. It was a sanctuary. It was a place where shattered dreams were painstakingly pieced back together. In one of the therapy rooms, a young girl, no older than 16, was grimacing as she worked on strengthening her ankle. When she saw Michael, her face broke into a radiant smile. "Meh," she exclaimed, momentarily forgetting her pain. "I didn't know you were coming today." "Hey, Keisha, how's that ankle feeling?" Michael asked, walking over to her, his demeanor completely natural. He wasn't Michael Jordan, the global icon. He was just MJ, a concerned mentor. Getting stronger every day, she said. The therapist says I might be back on the soccer field for the spring season. That's what I like to hear, Michael beamed. He turned to Yvette. Keisha, here is an All-American soccer player. Got taken out by a bad tackle in the state semifinals. And I'm going to come back and win it all next year, thanks to this place. Keisha added, looking at Yvette with bright, curious eyes. Are you Mrs. Jordan? Wow. It's so cool to meet you. Yvette smiled, a complex wave of emotions washing over her. There was immense pride in the incredible, life-altering work her husband was doing. But it was intertwined with a sharp, deep pain from having been excluded from it for so long. When the tour was over, they retreated to David's office. The walls were covered with more photos, newspaper clippings about local athletes, and thank you letters. Why, Michael? Yvette finally asked, her voice quiet but firm, once David had discreetly left them alone. Why hide all of this from me? From your own family? Michael took a deep breath. At first, he began, it was fear of failure. I was pouring a fortune into this. What if it didn't work? What if it became a money pit? And then, once it started succeeding, he hesitated. Then it was fear of it becoming public. Fear that the media would get a hold of it and turn it into another Michael Jordan's charity story. And what would be so wrong with that? Yvette asked, confused. You're doing something amazing here. Because it's not about me, he insisted, the passion evident in his voice. The second my name is officially attached to this, the focus shifts. It becomes about me, the celebrity, the savior. I didn't want that. I wanted these kids to feel like they earned this, that they're here because of their own talent and hard work, not because they're getting a handout from some rich athlete. I wanted them to have their dignity. Yvette absorbed his words, the logic sound, the intention pure. But it still didn't heal the wound. That explains the public secrecy, she conceded. It doesn't explain the secret from me. I'm your wife, Michael. He looked down at his hands, the guilt heavy on his shoulders. When we got married, you were already dealing with so much, just by being with me. The scrutiny, the lack of privacy. Then the twins came along, your own career. This place, he sighed, this became my sanctuary. The one place in the world where I wasn't the brand. Where I could just be MJ from Wilmington. It was selfish, I know, but I wanted to protect that, to keep it just for me. A heavy silence fell. Through the office window, Yvette could see Keisha, the soccer player, now walking without her crutches, a look of fierce determination on her face. 12 years of secrets. 12 years of stories like Keisha's. There were times I almost told you, Michael continued, his voice soft. Every time one of our kids got a full scholarship. Every time a former patient came back to volunteer. I wanted to share those wins with you, more than anything. Then, why didn't you? She asked, turning to face him. Because with every year that passed, it got harder, he admitted, his voice cracking with emotion. The secret got bigger. How do I start that conversation? Oh, by the way, honey, for the last 5, 7, 10 years, I've been running this massive operation and hiding it from you. I was a coward. I couldn't find the words. Tears welled in Yvette's eyes again, but this time they weren't tears of anger or betrayal. They were tears of a complex, profound sadness for the invisible wall that had stood between them for more than a decade. I don't know what to say, Michael, she confessed. I am so incredibly proud of what you've built. It's breathtaking, but I'm also so hurt that you cut me out of such a huge, important part of your life. He reached his hand across the desk, a silent plea. After a long moment, she met his hand, their fingers intertwining. There's one more thing, he said softly. One more person you need to meet. The real reason this all started. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the athletic fields, Michael led Yvette to a quiet, secluded garden at the back of the center. It was a peaceful, meditative space. In the center of the garden, there was a simple granite bench and a small, understated bronze plaque. It read, In memory of Leroy Smith, 1,963 1,981. Your flight was cut short, but your spirit inspires others to soar. Michael sat on the bench and patted the space beside him. The North Carolina sky was ablaze with color, a dramatic backdrop for the final piece of the puzzle. Leroy Smith, Michael began, his voice thick with an emotion that was still raw after more than 40 years. He was my best friend. We grew up together, played on the varsity team together at Laney High. Yvette listened, rapt. Michael had told her countless stories about his childhood, but the name Leroy Smith had never been mentioned. Everyone thinks I was the hotshot, the one destined for greatness, Michael said with a wry, sad smile. They're wrong. Leroy was the man. He was better than me. Taller, faster, could jump out of the gym. He was the one who got the scholarship offers first. He was the one everyone was sure would make it. He paused, taking a shaky breath. Our senior year, in the conference championship game, he went up for a rebound and came down wrong. A devastating knee injury. The kind that, today, we could fix. But not back then, Yvette whispered. Not for a kid whose dad was a bus driver and whose mom worked in a cafeteria, Michael said, his voice hardening with the memory of the injustice. The school doctor told him to rest it. His family couldn't afford a specialist. His dream, everything he'd worked for, it all vanished in an instant. Yvette could see the decades-old pain etched on her husband's face, a wound that had never truly healed. I went off to Chapel Hill on my scholarship. Leroy, he stayed here. He tried to work, but the pain in his knee was constant. He got depressed. Michael's voice dropped to a barely audible whisper. He started self-medicating, painkillers, alcohol. In 1981, during my freshman year at UNC, Leroy took his own life. Yvette gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh, Michael, I'm so sorry. I never knew. Nobody knows, he replied, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. It's the story they leave out of the documentaries. It's the ghost that's been chasing me my whole life. He gestured toward the impressive building behind them. When I reconnected with David in 2013 and heard the same stories were still happening, I knew I couldn't let another Leroy Smith happen. Not on my watch. I couldn't save him. But I could be damn sure I was going to save some others. She wrapped her arms around him, holding him tightly, feeling the tremors of long-suppressed grief shake his powerful frame. Why? She asked softly. Why did you never tell me about Leroy? He closed his eyes. Guilt, he said, the word raw and exposed. I felt like I failed him. I was so wrapped up in my own rising star that I didn't see how far he was falling until it was too late. When we met, I was already Michael Jordan. I didn't want you to see that part of me. The failure, the biggest regret of my life. They sat in silence for a long time, holding each other as darkness fell around them. Yvette finally processed the full, staggering weight of it all. The center, the athletes, the 12 years of secrecy, was all an act of penance. An atonement. I understand now, she finally said, her voice gentle. I understand why you couldn't talk about Leroy. But the center, Michael, this beautiful, hopeful place, why not share the good part with me? He pulled back to look her in the eyes, his own red-rimmed but clear. Honestly, I was afraid you'd want to professionalize it. Turn it into a part of the Jordan brand. You're so brilliant at marketing, at creating a narrative. I was terrified this place would lose its soul, its quiet purpose, and just become another one of my public-facing ventures. The admission stung, but Yvette recognized the truth in it. She did have a talent for that, for shaping stories. You didn't trust me to respect its sanctity, she stated, not as an accusation, but as a fact. I should have, he admitted, his voice filled with remorse. That was my failing, not yours. I let my own ghosts and fears build a wall between us. Just then, David approached them with a young man who looked to be in his mid-20s. Sorry to interrupt, David said, but Jamal is heading out and wanted to say thank you again. The young man beamed at Michael. MJ, I just heard Mrs. Jordan was finally seeing the place. I had to come say hi. Jamal is just finishing his master's in sports administration at Duke, David explained proudly. He was in our second ever group of kids. Shattered his elbow. Now he volunteers here twice a week, mentoring the new ones. This place saved my life, Jamal said, turning to Yvette, his expression earnest. I was headed down a bad path after my injury. This center and MJ, they gave me a new dream. It's an honor to finally meet you, ma'am. After they left, Yvette and Michael remained in the garden, the first stars beginning to pepper the Carolina sky. 12 years, Yvette murmured. So many Jamals. So many stories you lived all by yourself. Michael nodded. I was wrong to shut you out. I see that now, with absolute clarity. Yes, you were, she agreed, her voice firm but loving. A marriage is about sharing the burdens, Michael, not just the trophies. She paused, looking at the illuminated building. But I understand, and I am in awe of what you've done. The silence that followed was different. It was a comfortable, healing silence, a silence of understanding. So, what happens now? Michael asked, his voice full of hope. Yvette thought for a moment. Now, she said, a small smile playing on her lips. We operate with total honesty. No more secrets. Ever. He nodded emphatically. And second, she continued, her eyes lighting up with an idea, I want in. Seeing his hesitant look, she clarified, not for the publicity, not to put my name on a building. I respect what this place is, why it has to stay quiet. But you're missing something here. What's that? He asked, intrigued. A mental skills program, she replied. You're fixing their bodies, but these kids have been through serious trauma. They need to learn about resilience, focus, how to handle the psychological pressure of recovery and high-stakes competition. I can build that curriculum. I can mentor them. For the first time since she had opened that black box, Yvette saw the genuine, unguarded smile of her husband return. It was the smile she fell in love with, the one reserved just for her. That, he said, squeezing her hand, would be perfect. 3 months later, the entire Jordan family was at the Horizon Center. Yvette was leading a workshop on visualization techniques for a group of rapt teenagers. Victoria and Isabel, having heard the story of Leroy Smith, were helping David sort new athletic gear, their young faces serious with purpose. In a quiet moment, Yvette found Michael standing by the window of David's office, watching his family, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. What are you thinking? She asked, wrapping her arms around his waist. About how something that started from so much pain and guilt could turn into all this, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And about what a fool I was to ever think I could do it without you. Even the best-intentioned secrets build walls, Yvette reflected, resting her head on his shoulder. But we're here now, together. That's all that matters. Later that evening, as the twins slept in the small, unassuming apartment Michael kept nearby for his visits, the couple sat on the bench in the memorial garden. The plaque honoring Leroy Smith seemed to glow in the soft light. He would be so proud, Michael, Yvette said softly, of what you built from his memory, of all the lives you've changed. He nodded, looking up at the vast, starry sky. You know what I've learned through all this? He said. Sharing a burden doesn't just have the weight, it multiplies the strength. And it's not just your secret anymore. Yvette smiled, leaning into him. It's our family's legacy. As they walked back inside, the quiet hum of the facility a comforting sound, Michael Jordan reflected that his greatest regret had somehow, miraculously, become his most meaningful triumph. And now, finally, after 12 long years, it was no longer a secret carried in solitude, but a shared mission with the woman he loved, a testament to the enduring power of truth, forgiveness, and rebuilt trust.